regular board meeting to order. Roll call shows all present except for Dawn, who's excused. Have the March 15th, 2018 regular board meeting minutes. Any questions, corrections, comments?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I would abstain, I don't think I was here for that.
March 15th, 2018 closed session board meeting minutes. Questions, corrections?
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Agenda changes. We will be moving item A from new business up to this point. And I am pleased to inform you that Jane Booth has received the designation of Wisconsin Certified Municipal Clerks from the Wisconsin Municipal Clerks Association as of March 1st, 2018. This designation comes only after completing many hours of training and experience related to our municipality's business. This designation shows the dedication that Jane has to us and the citizens of our municipality. I would like to thank Jane and present you with the plaque. Thank you. We'll move on to license and permits.
We have operator licenses number 107 for Caitlin Knopke, 108 for Steven Spatala, 109 for Amy Strober, 110 for Jevis Kunke, 111 for Pamela Willard, and 112 for Renita Dompier. I would like to separate out the one for Jevis Kunke from that list, so just 107 through 109, 111 through 112. Then the temporary Class B retailers licenses, number 20 for Hortonville Lions Club, number 20 for SCA Wisconsin, and temporary operators licenses, number 14 for Colleen Hohensee, number 15 for Noel Yor, number 16 for Jan Malman, and number 17 for James Nesbitt. All of the operators licenses and temporary operators licenses have received the sergeant's signature and approval, so I would be looking for a motion to approve everything except for operators license number 110.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
And then I would look for a motion to approve operator's license number 110 for Jevis Kunke.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And one abstention. Before we get to pre-registered citizens, I would like to say to the audience. This is a five minute for you to talk. It's not an interaction. We will not be answering any questions or talking. And I do ask if the person before you has said basically the same thing you're going to say, I would ask if you decline talking. If we start to get too repetitive on stuff, I will put an end to pre-registered citizens. We don't want to hear the same thing over and over again. For that, we'll start with pre-registered citizens.
First on the list is Lauren Steinacker from 8011 Urban Drive.
Lauren Steinacker, I'd like to reiterate from the previous meeting that we had the fact that there was no substantial evidence brought forth by the village to show any benefit of the completion of Michael Richter Street. It doesn't improve traffic flow, it will not bring a significant revenue. It is another road to maintain and is not a benefit to either response vehicles. I can't wrap my head around how the village thinks spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on an unnecessary road when there are multiple roads in the village that need repair. Just because you have documentation from 18 years ago for future development on a road doesn't mean it's a good development plan for the present or the future anymore. Thank you.
Please! If that continues, I will clear the room because we do not need the extra distraction. Next on the list.
Second on the list is Ashley DeCook from 218 Gabriel Lane.
First of all, I want to say that I think we all deserve to have our voices heard here, even if we are saying the same thing, because we're all concerned about the same thing. So obviously some of the things that I might be saying are repetitive of him, but I think we also need to think that we need to think about the families that everybody has here. I just spent my whole day until about an hour ago in La Crosse because my son has a disability. He's going to be having another surgery. We have a lot of bills to pay. I don't want to spend $1,800 to $3,000 on a road that does not benefit me. So I feel like I could cry right now. We are not, what you just said up there did not feel supportive of these people in this room.
Next is Jim Muller from 806 Hickory Street.
I'm going to say some of the same things, but I'm a taxpayer here, I'm a voter, and you are elected to represent us, okay? So if we want to talk, we're going to talk, and that's your responsibility to listen to us, right? Well, you're not this is not a chiefdom or anything like that. So what we have to say is important to us, and you're here to represent us. So I would like anybody who wants to be heard. And I'm offended by the fact that you say, I'm going to stop listening to people.
The only reason I said
It's not an interruption. That was our
Please, I did not interrupt you when
Yes,
you
you
were
did.
talking.
This is my 5 minutes.
Interrupt me.
You're interrupting me, this is not 5
You
minutes.
stop, and I was answering what you were. Please, I will clear this room, and I have the right to. Wow. Now, we want to hear what you have to say, but we don't want to hear the same thing over and over and over again. Once is enough. If somebody says something and you're just going to repeat it, there is no need to have it repeated. We've already heard it. That is why I said that. It's not that we don't want to hear you, we just don't want to keep hearing the same thing over and over and over again.
Okay, so I'm going to continue this interaction just for a second, okay? So here is our time to talk, and this is part of what I have written down, is our time to talk to all of you at once, right? Instead of me making a call, I talked to some people last night, I texted back and forth with people, and I tried to connect with other people, left messages when was unable to. So this is our time to talk to you. Otherwise, you're gonna, if you don't want to hear the same thing, I understand that, I understand your point, but otherwise you're gonna get 50-some phone calls, and everybody's gonna say the exact same thing to you over and over and over again. And unfortunately, you decided to, that's what you were here to do, is to listen, and you're much better off, in my opinion, and I'm trying not to be argumentative, but you're much better off to listen to it here, where we can be done, and we don't have to sit here and call, all 50 people don't have to call your phone number to talk to you about the exact same thing. Okay, you understand my point? Okay, and I'm slightly offended, and by the fact that you want to shut it down, right? That you're
I don't want to,
right?
but if you force me to, I will.
Well, if
you don't follow stuff, I will shut it down.
Okay.
The protocol has to be followed.
All right. So, yeah, the protocol is we have 5 minutes and we can talk. And that's the protocol. There's no limitation that says we can't say the same thing for our 5 minutes.
Bob, I got a question to ask of you, is because this is getting more to a public hearing, which we had already held.
This is not a public hearing.
Well, I didn't start the interaction, Bob.
Jim, the public hearing was held last time. Now, it's normal practice to have the comments from citizens present at the beginning and the end of the meetings. That's up to this board. That's not required by law. And so that's the whole point. This is not another public hearing to go over the same issues. But I think the board is trying to respect, the tradition of having citizens speak. So, I would hope you keep that in mind.
I'm just here to say my piece. I'm not here to attack anybody. I started with an interaction, and that's what I'm here for. Okay. So, I don't have the same financial drains as everyone else, but the people that live in our neighborhood, we're not wealthy people, right? We don't all have deep pockets. So if this assessment goes through, this is my kid's Disney trip, it's gone, right? So put yourself in my shoes and say, you know, hey, how would you like to say, I'm gonna put a road in your neighborhood, and I'm gonna take away your family vacation for this year because of a document that was written 17 years ago that says that I can do it. And I think, in my opinion, I think that there are a lot of other projects in the city that could use the money that you're considering placing in this project. There's no reason to do it. There hasn't been anything that's been put forth to say this is why it's beneficial, right? I understand there may be some things in the future that you know, some access to the project was not supposed to have access to it, but you know, that's neither here nor there. So obviously all the residents don't want it, they don't feel we need it, and it's I think one of the reasons the board and the village president are elected is to manage the funds for the city, right? You're here to represent us as the citizens, you're here to represent the best interests of the city, and you're here to manage the tax funds that we all pay in, and so we run schools and everything else. I don't see this as good management of the funds that the city has available, of the limited funds that we have, right? To put in a road that goes nowhere, that serves no purpose. There are two people who stand to benefit from it. One is Mr. Parker, because he has some lots on there, right? And he's expressed that he's not interested in it, right? So the only other potential is another access way for the cottages on Main project that's going in. I would also propose that if the assessment does go through, that there be an amendment to it to retroactively assess the cottages on Main if there ever is an access way put in, because that would mean that they are part of that roadway and didn't pay for it. So the 54 residents of the Parker Heights would have paid for a road that they all of a sudden get access to. So most of us believe that eventually they will get access. You know, because when the fire department comes in and says, hey, you only have one entrance and one exit, we're gonna slam you on your fire insurance. Then they're gonna come back to the city and they say, we're gonna need a fire access. We could just put an apron in and we can cut a piece of curb out and be right to Michael Richter. Well, they didn't pay for that road. We did, if this goes through. So if that does happen, all those properties should be retroactively assessed and given the money back to, that's about a third of the entire project. Considering there's, what, 20-some houses, or 20-some units going in there out of the 54. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Next.
Next is Brian Rassack of 801 Michael Richter Street.
So I'd like to echo the disrespect you show towards us, because I don't think anyone in this room feels that you've respected us, neither this meeting or the last meeting. And you're our village president, so I'd just like to make that on record. It's very appalling that you're representing our village and the character that you present of yourself. But I will go forth and not repeat some of the things that have been said or echoed. But I would like to point out is one thing back in the history of this. In October 19, 2005, the Public Works Committee. At that time, the village administrator was J. Everett Mitchell. And he pointed out something very critical that I felt in that meeting. He pointed out that he needed the committee and ultimately the board, they needed to view this projection of Michael Richter expansion as being in the best interest of the public. That is this in the best public interest to be completed the road as originally planned? I think everyone can attest that this is not in the best interest of the public. It is not serving the purpose. It is not serving that need. Again, we go back 17 years when this originally was. At that time, there probably was a legitimate reason. There isn't anymore. And right now, it does not serve in the best public need. Spending our tax-paying dollars on a road that does not need to be there is not in the best interest of the public. And again, it's ironic how much Bob Sorensen was pushing on this. He was quoted in there as also, he mentioned the base condemnation option, which is ultimately eminent domain, how much we were pushing to get that road, which ultimately we're many, many years, 13 years later, and we're talking about this. So just wanted to point that out. That is part of the history. The village administrator at that time was very rational and acknowledged the fact that we need to understand that this is the best for the public interest, which it is not in the best interest of the public right now. So I have to say.
Next.
Jeff Meyer of 820 Hickory Street.
I would just repeat everything that these gentlemen have already said and ladies, so I guess I have nothing to say.
Brian Parker.
I'd just like to make it very clear to the board and the residents that as a developer, we have no desire for this to go through. You guys know that. Economically wise, it makes no sense for us to put that through there. And if you can go back, I mean, this is a long time ago. This is 17, 18 years ago. The original plan, we were talking about this since that last meeting, the original plan that we submitted did not have Michael Richter Way in it. Because there was no reason for us to put it in there. But as part of the development, that was one of the things that came back in one of the reviews that the village, well, at that time, the village board, and McMahon, I believe, was the engineer at the time. That was one of their reviews, was that they wanted that road to go through there, to connect them to. Well then, for part of us to get our developers agreement done, to get the project moving forward, all right, we'll work on it. We tried to buy the Falser Farm a couple different times, could not get that done. So it's like, there's just no reason for us to want this to go through there. And I just want to make that very clear to everybody, that you guys know that, the board knows we don't want to go through there. Do what you may, and thank you very much.
Greg Yeager for 211 Howard Drive.
I don't have anything new to add to this, but I would just ask the board members that are voting on this, that if this was your property, how would you feel? A road that has no benefit to you, that the village is asking you to pay $1,800 to $3,000 for, it feels like a punch in the gut for somebody that's lived in this town for 15 years and is proud to call this home. I work here. I pour my life soul into this town and into making the people in this town better. And I hope that you vote as a representative of us, the community members that are here working, trying to make this a great place to live, and not just for some little technicality because you can. Thank you.
Very nice to say.
Tom Baker, 203 Greendale Road.
I would just like to once again reiterate that we are the taxpayers of this, and we should all have a voice, and once again, that's just not the way things should be done. I want to ask for your vote for the public, the people that live in that area, and I certainly think that when you have 100%, how many times do you have an issue that comes in front of you where every person in the room is pulling the same way? There's always this side and that side. You have a group of people here, there's not one person in this room that is for this project, including the developer. And once again, we talked about the issues in this town. Drive up and down some of these roads over here behind Mike Murphy's. My goodness, we need to spend some money there, not on a road that goes nowhere and does nothing. And I'm going to quit at that. I'm going to congratulate Jeannie on getting reelected, and I wish her all the luck in the world. And Jack, thank you so much for all that you've done for this community, and I just wish we had more time with you. Thank you.
Andy Marks, 204 Gabriel Lane.
This is kind of going back to about 5 or 6 years ago when Benchmark was developing the same site. At that time, it was also discussed about Michael Ricker Road going through, and at that time, they said there was no reason for it. They said the only thing they might do is have an emergency access off the end of Gabriel Lane for them to get into that apartment development at that time. And I'm just wondering what changed from that time to this time that now we need it and before we did it. To me, whoever's paying for it should be the beneficiaries there, but not the future developer across the street. To me, it seems like he's the only person that's going to benefit from this road going through. And he doesn't pay a dime, and all of us that don't want it are footing the bill. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Wade Steidel, and I don't have an address.
That's me, and you know, just looking at the plan and kind of coming into this new, I'm actually a realtor in the area, and you know, I've had inquiries about properties over there, and all of a sudden it's come to light that there's this assessment, and then it dates back to 2001, and now the people in the subdivision are going to be having to pay for this little street. And looking at everything, so looking at the outside, you know, from the outside looking in, it looks like it's been a bad business decision in 2001, and I can't imagine how it is expected of the residents there to flip the bill for a developer's road where they are going to profit from the lots that are sold in that area, in the neighborhood. You know, so however we got to this point, it's just, you know, I'm flabbergasted as to, you know, how it's expected of these people to pay for the road that's going through there. And the cost, they've got no say in the contractors to do the road. If there's been bids out there, we don't know. And you're taking the highest bid, the lowest bid, an average of, and it's an open checkbook. And I'm just amazed. But the road evidently was drawn, the subdivision evidently was drawn over property that was not acquired. And so it was very presumptuous that you would ever get that land, you know, to put that road through. And I don't know what happened there, that they finally acquired, that the village finally acquired that land, but it's, you're pushing an agenda, you know, on people that are just getting blindsided with this thing. They've had, you know, very little people have even had a clue that this was coming, you know, until they became property owners there. But, you know, and the cost estimates, from what I've heard, is either X or X times 2. Is it 1, or is it going to be double that? So, like, and I've heard anywhere from $1,800 to $3,000, a little bit over $3,000. So that's not even narrowed down. So it's, you know, I hope that there's some decisions that could be made there that, you know, could steer this in a different direction that would be more positive for this community. Thank you.
Mr. Steidel, what's your address?
I'm at 1265 Fieldview Drive.
And what community would that be?
That's Menasha.
Thank you. And that is the end of the list.
Moving on. Committee reports, Planning and Zoning Commission.
We had a CSM. Oh, that's right. We haven't had a meeting since the last board meeting, but we are having one on the 17th. And that will include a certified survey map. The one that was pulled from the last agenda is back on the agenda, along with some sample institutional zoning districts, because we had spoken about the need for that for areas like the school and the village hall and so forth that are currently residential. So that meeting is coming up on April 17th.
Economic Development Committee.
We had we have the minutes in, are the minutes in the packet, Lynn?
Yes.
Okay, the minutes are in the packet. The primary reason for having the meeting was we had a facade loan application that was granted for, I can't think of the address, but it's the building that was formerly owned by K.R. Griesbach on the south side of Main Street. That's going to be a 2 businesses, plumbing and spa type services. So that facade loan was approved by the Economic Development Committee. That does bring the facade loan balance to about $10,000, and as I mentioned last time, that I intend to apply for a grant that could potentially increase that pot of money. So that's the facade loan part of it. We spoke of the potential annexation that we were looking into, and I updated the committee at that time of the notification or the letter that went out from Greenville containing incorrect information about the intent of the annexation and the area of the annexation and other information that was incorrect in it. Let's see, then the next part was we talked about, just updated the economic development that's going on in the village. And during that discussion, we had a citizen or a guest in the at the meeting question about the closure of TID 2. And the gentleman presented himself as a potential businessman of Hortonville, and it was actually the chairman of the town of Greenville, along with another supervisor from Greenville that did not identify himself. So that was the Economic Development Committee meeting.
Any questions for Diane on that? Hearing none, we'll go on to urban forestry.
I'll take that. The minutes are in your packet. The committee members are continuing to finalize plans for this year's Arbor Day and branching out into our community activities for that day. So that's all I have on that.
Any questions for Carl on this? And we'll move on to unfinished business from previous meetings. Event policy.
I'll take that as well. You've had this policy for a while. We've had it for over a year now. We just never adopted it. Again, the purpose of it is to regulate special events so that those events occur with the safety and health of the participants in mind, and as well as to ensure the protection of public assets and resources.
I see a problem with it. It's kind of open-ended. There's no pricing sheet, so we don't know.
We don't know what they're going to bring.
Yeah, I mean,
no.
If there's going to be an event, you need police presence. How much you pay per hour? That's pretty much open. We don't know that. Nobody knows that.
Per hour for police? No,
yeah.
Probably.
We're asking to pay $250 deposit.
Yeah.
For services rendered.
Yeah.
What do you charge it against? Do we get a bill? Now I speak as we for the Hortonville Civic Association. So these are.
Does the applicant get a bill? Yeah, it's explained in the policy how that's set up. No, we don't put down individual prices, just like we don't do that in any of the ordinances. I'm sure the police would be whatever the overtime costs are, whatever the public works costs are.
Kind of nice to have a price sheet.
That'll make it extremely difficult to.
Well,
we have to change the plan all the time.
You provide barriers. You set up barriers? Is there a charge for a barrier?
Probably not.
Okay. There's charge for time to put that up?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think in my case, in most situations, I try to assign a part-time officer to save, you know, the event coordinator some money, you know, in wages and benefits. But I think that's something that I'd have to work with the event coordinator on. What does that look like for staffing? Do I need more than what my part-time officers can cover, that sort of a thing? So I don't know that I could put an hourly rate on that.
You know, I just don't want it to end up after the Hortonville homecoming on June 1st and 2nd, where we pay $250 deposit for services and we get a bill for $490.
I got a question.
You know, it's something we can't budget.
Bob, the thing that's raising me, and no offense, Peter, but you're saying we and referring to the Civic Club. So, but this is a board discussion.
Well,
I mean, I could sit out there.
Yeah, I mean. Okay, you're raising some issues that probably need to be answered, but you should be in your capacity as a board member. And if you are going to speak on behalf of the Civic Club, you should do it from the...
You're right. So I'll do it next time.
Well, one of the concerns is that because we've reviewed this several times, it's made its rounds and now it's back up again, is that frankly, because we've got some events coming up now, and the 2018 budget is dependent on recouping some of these costs because some of these events have just costed us too much money in order to provide services for them, that if we don't have an event policy in place, we cannot provide those services because our 2018 budget is dependent on revenue coming in to recoup some of those costs. So we could not provide services to events in 2018 until we have an event policy in place.
In all fairness.
What's anticipated as far as turnaround? So you have the permit made to the village, and then the department heads will turn it around how quickly.
Well, they need to turn it in 15 days ahead, at least 15 days ahead of time.
Yeah, but then, I mean, that's what I see, is you want to do it well in advance, because aren't you going to get the feedback then? Doesn't this procedure allow for the department heads' expenses to be communicated back to the sponsors?
Yes.
And then you can make that decision. And one of the reasons for this is you end up with somebody coming in and deciding to have a special event, and they can, you know, that they can create a lot of expense on behalf of the village unilaterally, and you know, may not be a group that's as community-minded as, you know, some of our civic groups.
But if an entity outlined the fact that they needed X barricades set up, one police attendant or at the crosswalk there for a period of 9 hours, they should be able to give us a price on that.
And it's right there in the application.
You know, when they had Dash Down Match, they had 2 officers on duty at one intersection. Why did we need 2 officers on duty that day?
I had 2 public works people on duty, plus barricades, plus setting them out. It probably cost us $600–700 for that event.
And I would say that those that were in the cross, like, I'm assuming you're meaning the intersection down here, is what officers typically will do is move.
I got it. The thing is we're getting into the details about what services we're providing for an event. We really need to stick to the fact that we're talking about the event policy. I don't mean to shut it down, it's just that we're going to go on forever. I mean, I do mean to shut it down because that's not, our agenda item is about the event policy, not that part of it.
But you need details. If we don't have details, how can we go on something that could cost someone like a Lutheran church who's doing, it's a nonprofit, they're trying to earn money for their school, and they do not know how much it's going to cost them. I agree with Peter.
I don't deny that, but
the application on here, it does put down number of hours for the police resources, and total cost. The same as for the public works. And the administrator puts the total cost to the village on there, and that would go back to the event person, and they can say, you know, yes, I want to do this, or I want to get my own people.
My only recommendation would be that you make it more than 15 days, if that's a concern.
It's 15 business days, so that's actually 3 weeks. You know, you make it 20 business days.
Well, you know, if you have any significant event, it's probably in the works for months.
Months.
Right? So what's wrong with putting it 60 days out? You get your feedback, then you can decide whether or not you want to do the event.
60 calendar days.
If that's a concern. But it's going to require these groups to be proactive and think ahead and not just come along at the end and say, well, geez, we didn't know this.
Yeah, they're not planning a fundraiser overnight, so.
No, not at all. I mean, I think 60 calendar days is fair. For
Because you're going to get that
events.
feedback then, Peter.
Right.
then could we get a motion to approve it with that change?
You okay with that?
No, I'm going to abstain.
No, but you're okay with that?
Yeah, 60 calendar days, it works better. At least you have a number that you go to negotiate.
Then I make a motion to approve
Right.
with the addenda that it's a 60 calendar day
And I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Next to the downtown zoning code.
As you know, the downtown zoning task force have been working on downtown zoning code for about 15 months. It was brought to the Planning and Zoning Commission, frankly, I don't recall the dates anymore, last fall. They recommended approval and it went forward to the village board. We had the public hearing on it. The primary comments that we had on it, one was about the signage, maximum signage, specifically as it relates to the multi-tenant building. The code had limited it to 5% of the frontage, and the concern was that in those instances with multi-tenants, it was not enough. And then the other one was the concern about card sales allowed in the downtown, or not allowed in the downtown district. To address some of those concerns, the Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed it at their last meeting and incorporated or is making a recommendation to the village board to adopt the code as it is, with the addition of 15% sign frontage for multi-tenant businesses. And as far as the car sales, they suggested it stay as it is because this is just about the code, the regulations on it. It does not establish the district yet. And frankly, the alternative for the district is to not include what is existing. So that is an option of it. But they do feel that for the downtown district moving forward, that it would not be conducive to have a car deal salesman within that district. Again, this is not establishing the geographic location. That we would do at a different time. We would adopt the zoning code, and then we would rezone properties into that zoning code. So the village has the option of not zoning the existing car dealership into the zoning code. So that is the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission to move forward with the downtown zoning code, with the one change of being the signage, maximum signage, to allow for up to 15% for multi-tenant buildings. So I don't have a resolution or an ordinance at this point because I'm just bringing it forward to the planning, or to the board. And then what I would do next is to actually bring it up for the board to approve with that change. And then after that, then we'd start working on the actual district geography. So I don't need a motion right now. I just want to give you the heads up that that's what the work is going to be, is to make that one change, but to leave the other one as it is. And then answer if you had any questions on it or comments.
Anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to new business. A, we have already taken care of. B is Michael Richter assessment.
And I passed this out to you guys because this agenda item was actually put on just because I've been getting a lot of questions. There's been some questions that I felt would be good to just, and I think you guys have been too, to address in this meeting. One being the process, because this agenda item is not for a vote. So I just want to go through, I'm going to read through what I had prepared here in response to some of the questions that I've been getting both from board members and from some of the residents. So again, I said this agenda item is not an action item. It was added to the agenda to explain the assessment process and history and to address some of the questions that staff have been receiving regarding the assessment. It's explanatory for the board and public. We can't entertain questions from staff can answer questions from the board that you have regarding the assessment, but we cannot from the public. So here's the process. The assessment process is actually in Wisconsin statutes, 66.0703. And there's 6 steps. The first one is the resolution, the preliminary, how was it worded again? The preliminary or resolution declaring intent to exercise special assessment powers. And that was done February 1st, 2018 at the village board meeting. Then the second one was the notice of assessment sent to the property owners. That was done March 1st, 2018. Then the public hearing. We included a public informational meeting to expand the time allowed for property owners and interested parties to comment and ask questions. That we held on March 15th, 2018. Both the public informational meeting which was held prior to the board meeting at the committee of the whole, and then the actual public hearing, which was held during the board meeting. Then the final assessment resolution, and that will be after the project bid and the costs are determined. And then that would spell out the assessment structure. And then 5th would be the final project report by engineers. And then finally, 6th would be the special assessment bills would be sent. So that's the process. Some of the questions, in response to some of the questions that staff and board have been receiving. One is that the special assessment, what we have proposed right now, assigns 50% of the total project costs minus upsizing to Parker Heights. And what I mean by upsizing is that the village has requested that with the utilities that we upsize the water in order to provide a loop. It's beneficial to the water circulation. Am I saying this right, Carl? Okay. So the village has asked for that upsizing. So the village is paying for the difference between standard and the upsizing. The village takes on that full cost. And then the remainder of the project, 50% is being proposed to be assessed to the Parker Heights subdivision. And the reasoning on that, the reason why we had kind of proposed it that way is so that the Parker Heights subdivision property owners are only paying for the south half of the road. The north half of the road is a combination of the north property owners and the village of Hortonville to cover that cost. So I know there's a gentleman that had asked about cottages on Main if they were to get access, which that is not part of the plan at all, and that's actually within the development agreement, but let's say they did, there would not be a charge back or anything because the Parker Heights residents are not being charged for that north part of that street. The portion attributed to Parker Heights, so the 50% minus the upcharge, will be divided equally among the 54 lots plus the 5 lots attributed to Outlot 1 owned by properties by Parker for a total of 59 lots. So it would be the 50% of the cost minus the upcharge or upsizing divided by 59. Owners of more than one lot would be assessed for the number of original lots owned. So if somebody owns 1.5 of the original lots or 2 lots, then it would be 1.5 or 2 times the assessment. As I said, the north half of the project is not assessed to Parker Heights subdivision owners. It's assessed to property owners on the north side and the village. And then, again, the upsizing cost of the infrastructure is solely the responsibility of the village. So I just wanted to go through that and answer some of those questions that I've been hearing. Anything you want to add? And I guess anything, I don't know if you've had other questions or if you have.
Any questions from the board?
I mean, I'm getting a lot of questions. The road itself, we're not voting on that, correct? I mean, we're voting on whether or not to assess. Is this, did I understand this correctly?
No. Right now, we're not voting. You're not
voting on anything tonight, but eventually when this comes up to a vote. So I guess my question is, and I think there's a misconception out there that we are voting whether or not to put a road in.
My understanding, and Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, is really the board we don't have the authority to revisit that because it's, I shouldn't say we, the board. It was already approved with the 2001 approval of the subdivision, which is a plat. A board decision cannot undo a plat. Is that correct, Bob?
Undo the plat.
Right, I mean, the plat was already approved and recorded.
No, plat.
The village board doesn't have authority to undo that.
No, the plat itself as platted can only be changed by court action. That's true. I think to answer your question, the board's already authorized.
Yeah, right. And that's the question I'm getting a lot is, Julie, I don't want this road to go through. Well, I don't think we have any control over whether or not the road goes through. We just have control over whether or not to assess and how much to assess, if we do.
Correct, and that's what in the last public informational meeting and board and public hearing, that's what I started out with, that the discussion and votes that are up are for assessment and the road existence is not.
Well, you previously made a decision to put the road through. We had a preliminary assessment, or a resolution of assessment. So what remains is the final assessment after the project's in and the costs are known.
So you're saying that there is absolutely no way that this vote entered into on 2001 could be rescinded by board?
No, I'm not saying that.
Oh.
So how can it be? How can it
Well,
be rescinded?
What if this
Yeah.
board decided that because of 54 residents?
Yes. If we listen to our public out there and they don't want it and we decide, how do we do this?
How do we undo a do
Yeah.
legally? Court action?
No, no.
Board vote?
In proper scheduled meeting, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna go back to utilities. Are the utilities able to go in with or without a road? Like their water that you're talking about?
Yeah, the water can go in with or without the road.
That's another question I had gotten, and I'm just trying to voice, trying to wrap my head around it. There's a lot of information.
There would be no reason to put sewer in.
I was gonna say, why would we put it in at all? If there's not going to be a road.
What, the water?
Yeah.
There was some
Well, it's
reason.
still the same reason we wanted to originally, is get a new loop in through there. Tie in Michael Ricker. We still want to tie in Michael Ricker and Gabriel with water and then run that through the property.
And you're saying we could do it without the road.
But, see, now the agenda item is on the assessment. We're going into open meetings concern.
Yeah.
Because this.
Now we're talking about something totally,
Correct.
So this will come up later.
But I guess those are the questions that I'm getting. And I'm getting tons of phone calls, and those are the questions that I'm getting. And I guess the hardest part is trying to explain that, first of all, it'll never leave the titles. This is not, we're not voting on a road, we're voting on an assessment. And the way the wording is, it could be 100% assessment, and the village came in at a 50%. I mean, there's always that option too of, could it be a different percentage, to make it a little more palatable to everybody. I mean,
Well, and actually, you hit it on, is that according to the notice of assessment that was recorded, we could do 100% of assessment to the Parker Heights.
But we don't have to do 100%.
And we didn't want to, and so that's why the village, technically, the village doesn't have to pay for any part of it. But we didn't want to do that because that wouldn't be palatable. So the proposal was for the village and the north property owners to pay for the north half, and the Parker Heights subdivision property owners pay for the south half. But technically, it could have been 100%.
It could be a different percentage. Instead of a 50-50, it's a 60-40 or a 70-30, or it could be different. We could. But
Any other questions on the assessment? Hearing none, we'll move on to the 2018 Arbor Day proclamation. Proclamation by the Village of Hortonville. Whereas the economic and aesthetics welfare of the people of Hortonville is largely dependent on the trees and forest lands of the state, and whereas everyone in Hortonville benefits directly or indirectly from trees and forested land, and whereas trees provide jobs, products, habitat for wildlife, recreational opportunities, and whereas trees provide oxygen, help purify the air, stabilize the soil, and assist in the water cycle, and whereas trees are an invaluable physical and psychological addition to Hortonville, provide shade, cool the air, and reduce noise levels, and whereas trees are an asset, attract tourism, increase property values, and enhance life, and whereas tree management increases their benefit for our community through planning, maintenance, timely removal and replacement, and whereas well-maintained trees benefit present and future generations. Now therefore, we, the Village Board of Hortonville, do hereby proclaim April 23rd through April 29th, 2018 as Arbor Week. Now we move on to O-4-18, ordinance to appoint a hearing examiner pursuant to Wisconsin statutes 61.651 AM2.
I'll take that out. So this is the proposed ordinance dealing with hearing examiner in the event there's disciplinary action in the police department. So in the event of such need, we would have a list. The second part of this is creating a list and propose 3 initial examiners. And we would go to that list, see who's available, and appoint one of them. And if nobody in the list is available, then we can still decide at that time who to appoint. But I think it's beneficial to keep a current list, and the village attorney can be responsible for making sure that the people on there are still ready to go back to work.
So this is an alternative in relationship to the discontinuance of services by the PSC?
That's right.
PFC.
The hearing examiner would take the place of the
PSC.
Right. That's correct. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion to approve 0418.
I'll second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. List of hearing examiners.
Okay. The initial 3 that I'm recommending are Stan Riffle, he's in Waukesha, John St. Peter is out of Fond du Lac, and then Paul Hemmer is in Sheboygan. Paul Hemmer is just recently retired from active practice, but has a wealth of experience, and I talked to him on the phone, and he is available. And the other 2 are very strong municipal attorneys, so I think all 3 are highly qualified.
You need a motion?
I would prefer one.
I'll make a motion to adopt the list as part of the agreement.
The initial list.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved. Agreement for professional services with McMahon, 2018 Michael Richter Water and Sewer Main and Street Construction Project.
You know, I just want to say something here before we get into this. Maybe this is appropriate here to table this until we find out what's going to happen with the Michael Richter project. I don't think we should enter into any agreements until we actually have some kind of meeting to discuss this further. So I'm going to make a motion to table it.
Okay, hang on a second. Hang on. If and when we do look at this, can we ask for separate, like with just the water, and then also one with water and road?
You better redefine the scope then. I mean, don't just ask for water, but.
Okay, but yeah, I mean.
If you guys redefine the scope of whatever happens over there.
Okay.
Then you can do that.
Okay, I just want to make sure that.
You don't want to do that without knowing what we're doing.
Okay, and that's understandable. I just want to make sure we're not
A waste of this time.
assuming that it's going to be all or, yeah, okay.
This takes into consideration that the road's going to go through.
Yeah, yeah, this one does.
We don't know where that's going to end up. So I made a motion.
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Be tabled.
Thank you, Peter.
Approval of sale of real estate to Wesley Crowe.
I'll take this one. This is a small parcel that's adjacent to the old industrial park. It's on West Main. It's basically an island within that county's property. So when the industrial park was initially laid out, there was a part that branched off of where John Avenue was. But then that was never incorporated into the final plat. And so it ended up, they didn't want to buy it, right? Yeah, it's hard to tell, but it just, they didn't have a use for it. So Carl, did we ever use it?
I'm passing around the map that shows the lot. It's actually in the front yard of, I forget what, 912 West Main. What happened is they got kind of cut off from the industrial park because Jim Custom Cabinets didn't want it. So it's been sitting out there in limbo, not on the tax rolls. It's actually in his front yard. He has to drive across it to get to it.
And have we ever had any use for it?
No use at all.
It's number 5 is actually Jim Cabinets.
Is it? Yeah.
Oh, it's over.
But that little piece belonged to that industrial park, part of Jim Cabinets. But they didn't want that. It's just way out in the middle of nowhere. And,
okay.
So back in 2012, we tried clearing this matter up, and as part of a handshake agreement was letting us put our wayfinding signs in that gentleman's front yard. We agreed to let him have that property if he paid the legal fees for transferring ownership. It's worth nothing to us. We can give it to him. It'll complete his property, get it back on the tax rolls. It's a win-win for everybody, just get rid of it.
Does that happen, I agree 100%, but did that happen in 2012? Why is it?
Because Les Kirk fell off the radar.
Oh.
Yeah, I can't make him take it. All right.
But I talked to him, he initiated the discussion again, and says that he wanted to do that. So I told him the first step was to get approval of the board. And if you approve that tonight, then I'd have an offer. I might even bypass the offer, but whether I have an offer to purchase or the ultimate deed, I would have your approval that Al and Lynn can sign that on behalf of the village to get him title to that. Okay, and again, he's only paying the cost of the transaction, so the village is not getting anything, that the village isn't expending anything.
We get whatever taxes we get on the...
That's right. So it will be whatever the assessor says that increases. There would be a slight assessment increase, that's correct.
I would make a motion to approve the transfer of the property as long as he's paying before the paperwork. That's worded correctly.
That's right.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approved.
Thank you.
O-5-18, ordinance to amend well abandonment ordinance.
This was originally intended to update the ordinance to mirror current state statutes and natural resources administrative codes, but the DNR never got back to me with some questions related to state statutes. Anyways, due to their taking so long to get back to me, I want to table this for now.
We need a motion to a table.
Do you want a motion to table it?
You wouldn't have to. I mean,
Did you say no action tonight?
yeah, no action.
Okay, then we'll move on to any other miscellaneous topics for future discussion.
I'd like to ask that we have a closed session meeting sometime next week to fully discuss the Michael Richter project. Can that do?
This doesn't meet any of the qualifications of exemption.
If you're saying closed, it would be, well, unless it was for negotiation purposes, but it doesn't, on the face of it, doesn't seem it does. It would seem it'd be an open meeting, but you'd have to come under one of the exceptions.
All right. Needless to say, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'd like to resurface the wheel tax topic for a future agenda item, which could help us with some of these assessments.
Let's get back to the Michael Richter meeting.
But this part is for miscellaneous topics for future discussion.
So all we would be doing, noting that we're going to have this on the future meeting.
Got it.
Okay.
Any other topics for future discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to report of village officials, administrator.
Just a reminder of the insurance carrier harassment and other training, scheduled for committee of the whole meeting prior to the April 19th board meeting. This is one, to provide training to help reduce our risk of liability, but also if all board members and all management team attend it, then we get 10% reduction in our officials liability insurance premium if all board members attend, and an additional 5% if all managers attend.
What happens if a board member has to attend by phone? Or isn't available at all?
I don't think it's, I think we'd be fine.
What time is it?
Maybe we'll get 8.5. It was before the April 19th board meeting. Lynn, do you recall what time did we, I think we said 45 minutes. It'll be a committee of the whole.
It was 5:30 or 5:45, I'm not sure which.
Yeah, and I know, John, you have difficulty getting to it. That's April 19th, so it's before the board meeting.
Would you be available by phone that night?
Possibly. Possibly.
That was an option.
And I'll look into it with the insurance carrier too to see. Okay, next.
What if I just took a picture of myself and placed it here?
Next, the emergency siren. Carl and I met with Allegheny County Emergency Management last week. Currently, the county owns the emergency siren in Hortonville, and they maintain it. The village only pays for electricity. It was purchased in 2014. The county will no longer maintain ownership nor maintenance costs beyond 2019. So at that time, well, prior to that, the village is going to need to make a decision on whether or not we take over ownership. We could certainly do that. However, then we would also have to take over any maintenance costs. And they do have the ability to last 20 to 30 years, and this one is new as of 2014. But it's just something that we'll need to consider. The last couple of years, it's been $300 to $700 a year, so it has not been huge, and they would continue to test it. But it's just something to consider. But the reason why I wanted to bring it up now is one, so that, I mean, we're going to have to start considering it right away at the end, when we start talking budget. Well, no, actually, not this year, so, yeah, next year. But the other reason why I wanted to bring it up now is because we're also working with Allegheny County to try to really encourage other options, because really one of the reasons they're not doing it anymore is because with cell phones and everything else, I mean, some people don't even hear it, and there's other methods to do it that are more efficient and standardized. One is the NOAA radios. The county will be purchasing some for municipalities, and will be given a certain amount, we don't know how many yet, to distribute, maybe to like the care partners, some of the more concentrated developments, however we choose to do it. So I don't know how many we'll get, but we also have an option of purchasing some through the county at a reduced rate. And then also just to really try to encourage our residents and just the public to do the ad hoc registry through Allegheny County. I know I've been registered on it, and you get text alerts or phone calls when there's the benefit of this over the sirens is that it can, chemical spills or anything like that, missing, children and storms and so forth. Whereas the siren, they won't run that if it's like a chemical alert, because they're afraid everybody go outside to look at the storm and then be exposed to the chemicals.
There's also a 3-minute delay on the siren.
So
the phone messaging system.
We really want to start boosting up that encouragement of people to register for ad hoc. So I want all of you guys to register for the ad hoc.
Ad hoc actually follows you wherever you are. Like we were out of state and got a notification of where we were, that there was something going on, which is pretty cool.
So just giving you the heads up that we will have some decisions to make in the somewhat near future, and then also to push for that ad hoc registry. And then lastly, that in this coming year, we're going to need to look on whether or not we want to budget for some NOAA radios. They're about $25 a piece if we buy them through the county.
Carl, what kind of maintenance could possibly be on it then? Other than greasing
the biggest one was the battery, the biggest expense so far.
I know they contract with Faith Electric, so every time they come out, like I said, they paid $565 over the last 3 years in maintenance. There's nothing saying it can't be higher. If everybody in the county gets rid of it, except for us, they're still not going to they're not going to send the signal anymore if we're the only ones with the sirens. So there's a potential there where everybody drops the sirens and goes to the telephones and stuff like that. So
I'm thinking of the older residents in this town ain't gonna have a cell phone.
we can carry it for a while.
Radio, yeah.
We could try it. One of the main issues with emergency management is there's not one single meteorologist down there. And these emergency sirens, these emergency sirens were originally intended for nuclear attack. So they evolved and they're also doing tornadoes. As we've seen in the past few storms over the last 3 or 4 years, sometimes they're late, sometimes they don't go off at all. Whereas they're hoping this telephone system, I know the younger people, but we could possibly carry it for 5 years, maybe at that time, people.
Yeah, I think.
Phase it out slowly. Yeah.
But I think what's important is that we need to get the word out to not completely rely on it, because that is a concern, and that's something we also have to look with our liability insurance carrier to see if there's any kind of liability on now that the village owns it and a tornado comes through and it doesn't go off. We got to make sure that we're not liable then because people were relying on notification from it and it failed.
I mean, I'd be very surprised if the rest of the villages or towns in the area would go away from it as well. I mean, it's $700.
I think especially for the newer ones like ours is 2014.
Yeah.
New London owns all of theirs. Excuse me, and that's one thing that was kind of on our to-do list. Is I think we should contact New London and find out about what their costs have been, and some of theirs are 25, 30 years old. So we could find out from them what their costs have been because they do own all 5 of theirs.
Theirs are the older ones. Now, we can run as long as the county's willing to man and set it off. And if it ever fails where it needs $20,000 to be replaced, then you can cut it off at that time. But
this is something for the future.
Yeah, it's mainly just to give you guys a heads up because emergency management approached us and went over if they want to give us as advance notice as possible so we can start making decisions and then also push for that NOAA and ad hoc.
Do you think that should be a future public safety item?
I mean, years from now, maybe.
Well, no, I mean, we'd have to know by next summer whether to put money in our budget.
Oh, then we have, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, then it would be a future public safety.
But not too far in the future.
Along with chickens.
Okay, those 2 are on my agenda.
I've been getting a lot of calls about chickens.
Have you really?
Yes, I'm starting to get them too.
Oh, I hadn't heard from you girls.
I just tell them, I give them your phone numbers. They call here.
Okay.
All right. East Village limits, I know you guys got a flurry of emails from me when all hell was breaking loose. But to kind of summarize is due to the recent notice of incorporation, the request for annexation will not proceed. I just have some things in here I wanted to quick go over with you just because I had been getting some questions as to why we hadn't already put out a legal notice for an intent to circulate a petition. Because if that had been in place prior to the notice of incorporation, then ours could have still been going forward. So I just wanted to explain why. And, just quick read some of this. It's just the notice to circulate a petition for annexation had not been published because the village had no intention of voting on the request for the annexation unless the village was capable of providing the services requested. If municipal sewer and water was deemed not feasible, neither technically or financially, it was assumed by both the village and All World Ford that the annexation request would not proceed. The potential annexation was not initiated by the village to expand boundaries in the tax base as has been portrayed. As I mentioned to you guys earlier, there's a lot of false information that was pushed out there. So this was actually parts of an email I sent to a resident who had asked me about it. The annexation was initiated by All World Ford for the extension of sewer and water. Hortonville did not feel it prudent to formally act on the request until the feasibility and cost analysis was determined so that we could aptly make a decision as to whether to proceed or not, which is why no legal notice or action commenced. We received the completed feasibility report and cost projections March 16th. So on March 16th was when we knew it was possible. The notice that Greenville had sent out was already had already been sent out prior to this to the residents, and the meeting was on the 22nd, and they filed for incorporation on the 23rd. So,
They just cut our knees from under us.
Excuse me?
They just cut our knees from under us.
Yes, and frankly,
You were up and up and they were.
well, frankly, the incorporation, I get it. It was a card they played, and I thought it was well played. It's just what was very disappointing was the false information that was put out was very frustrating. It caused some issues with Hortonia because they sent out a notice to Hortonia residents saying that we were annexing property, that the village was seeking to annex property in Hortonia, and that was not true. Well, part of it was in Hortonia, and when I called him on it and said, where did you get this, that information, his response was that it is, the village has the opportunity to annex from Hortonia. And I said, a statement of fact is a lot different than an opportunity, and it was stated as a fact.
So what are our next, what's our next?
Basically nothing. I mean, it's our hope. I mean, the main purpose of it was to get it all road forward on sewer and water, both for fire suppression needs and because of the arsenic advisory in that area to protect the wells, the private wells that are already out there.
Is that opportunity now absolutely gone?
The only way that opportunity that would still exist, because it appears that, in my perspective, is no matter where it comes from, as long as it's on sewer and water. Right. Greenville has now stated in their last information that they put on their website was that they do not intend to extend sewer and water there. Before they said they were, but now they're saying they're not. And I expect that they're not because I know the sewer service area process that they have to go through, and I just don't see the DNR approving that. So I don't see that that's likely. So the only way that it would happen is if there was an agreement, if they asked for Hortonville to provide sewer and water there, and I know All Road Forward really does want that.
Oh, yeah.
And last time I talked to Stu from All Road Forward, he said he was going to ask Greenville if they would consider entering into some kind of intergovernmental agreement with the Village of Hortonville where we would extend it out there. That's a possibility. The grant that we had talked about would still be viable. The TID funds would not, because we cannot use TID funds to provide sewer and water to a business that is not in the village limits.
Right.
So at most, we would have a grant that would cover 50%. The remaining 50% would have to come from somewhere. But that's very speculative because I have no clue where that stands right now. But ultimately, the goal is to get it on sewer and water. And my understanding from, is Ron still here?
Yes.
Is that without sewer and water, they will not have the fire suppression requirements necessary.
Well, they put a reservoir in.
Well, that's right, but it would be much higher cost.
It's just a ton of money.
So in talking, in some of the discussions in the meeting that we went to in Greenville, when it was brought up to Greenville that without sewer and water, that business may not happen, they stated that they're okay with that. So the concern is that, ultimately, in my opinion, Hortonville is supportive of it no matter which jurisdiction it's in because it means jobs.
Absolutely.
The retention of existing jobs, building jobs, and economic boost to the entire community.
It's not going to be revenue, but it's creation of jobs.
So I don't know if the intent is to stall, eliminate it completely, because the administrator did say that if it's not all rolled forward, then maybe somebody else will come later.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay.
I was very disappointed to hear that because, like I said, especially the livelihoods of the people that are currently employed. This is it may be all rolled forward now, but it's Mike Murphy Ford, and that's been here for that long. It's scary to think that there might be an intent to have them go away. Floored by it. All right, next, East Village residential property. The property east of Gilbert's, that's lease, the village had a lease with Sharon Johnson for that ended April 4th. She has vacated the property. She was noticed last year that we do not intend to renew the lease. So she's vacated the property. We're working to have asbestos determination and any necessary abatement before demolition. And we intend to contact Restore or something similar to see if they can salvage doors, windows, light fixtures, whatever. You know, not intending to sell them, just to try to salvage whatever we can out of it because it's a good thing to do.
Less landfill for us.
Right, and just...
There's a company in Appleton I reached out to that'll recycle, if you just take a whole truckload over there, they'll sort it.
Oh, wow. Restore? Habitat for Humanity?
No, it's a private company, it's for profit, but they'll sort the junk and almost nothing will go to the landfill.
Like all the plastic.
Yeah. Plastics, metals.
But Restore, I think Restore has people that will come in and actually dismantle and take stuff out.
Yeah, and we're looking at that as well.
Okay.
Again, we have to do some destructive asbestos inspection because it has the old cellulose, the asbestos cellulose in the ceiling and walls. So we couldn't do that while she was in the residence.
And we do have some interested parties considering development on the property. I've had about 4 or 5 inquiries, and I would say 2 of them are serious. Next is the Highway 15 update. The information I have on here is actually excerpted out of a document from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities because they're pushing the Just Fix It campaign with the state, where they're taking different projects around the state that have been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed, and creating like a brochure type thing on it and just distributing it mass throughout the state. And they're doing one for Highway 15 now. And that's where I found out this information, because DOT hasn't told us anything. What they said is that according to the February 2018 WisDOT report to the Transportation Projects Commission, the State Highway 15 project in Allegheny County schedule and scope is currently being reviewed by the department. This reflects a 2-year schedule delay. The thing that's concerning is the schedule and scope. So now it's uncertain if it's going to be done, not just delayed again. So it's where we stand right now. I'll get back to League Municipalities and let them know, go with the report that they're doing, and I'll send that out to you guys when they have it. But yeah. So, and then lastly, the police chief update. Al and I just met with the consultant just before the meeting tonight, and right now he doesn't feel that the current applicants meet the needs of the village. He has initially asked to extend the deadline, but now we're going to just put it open until filled in an effort to try to solicit additional qualified applicants.
Did we pay any money to them yet?
No.
So it's all at the end?
Yes.
Okay.
So what was the deadline?
Initially it was this Friday, and then he asked me to extend it to next Friday, but then he just talked to us today and said he found, is putting it out on one more website, the Chiefs Association or something. And so because he's getting it out on there later, he wanted me to extend it again, so then we just thought we just wouldn't put a deadline on it.
Any other questions? And now we'll move on to clerk treasurer.
The only thing that I have is the results of the election for trustee that you have in front of you. These are the 3 candidates who were the 3 top vote getters. So these will be the people who will be taking office on April 17th.
Okay, then moving on, Director of Public Works.
I don't have anything official, but I do have some concerns with dogs in the cemetery. We placed some no dogs allowed signs up there, but I have to work with Bob and create an ordinance specifically that say no dogs allowed in the ordinance. Because normally that wouldn't be necessary because of public nuisance law, but we already name another part, no dogs allowed in the ordinance, so I have to kind of follow the same suit with that one. AT&T is running new fiber optics from Main Street to the industrial park. They're not messing up our brand new road.
Your road?
Yeah, our brand new road. We have our annual meeting with Miami County Highways on April 23rd at 11 a.m. Typically, we like to invite the Public Works Chair and anybody else that likes to go, and village president. Anyway.
What's that?
Allegheny County Highways meeting, or annual meeting, just with Allegheny County.
Make sure that if you do get responses on this one, that we have a chance to post a quorum
Yeah,
in case there are enough people going.
When is the meeting, Carl?
It is April 23rd. It's 11 a.m. We typically leave here about a half hour early.
What day of the week is that?
I'd have to look. Typically, Public Works Chair buys lunch.
What's a Monday?
We have an order for us to be meeting in the morning, are we?
Yeah, we'll be fine.
We go, okay?
Yeah.
You will, lady.
Yeah, right.
I may be available, we go.
All right.
Maybe we can fund your grant.
Well, Al normally goes, and if I think Jeannie went last time, so if you do intend on going, I need to let them know. There are no updates concerning the Grandview Road MSID grant. We expect that in late May. For whatever reason, the government down in Madison's a couple months behind schedule on everything. So that's all I have.
Any questions for Carl? And then we'll move on to the police department.
Yeah, the only thing I have, Governor Walker has declared next week as the tornado and severe weather awareness week. So Carl and I were just talking about that. My goal just to be to get around to the department heads, ensure that they know shelter in place locations. The mock drills are going to be on Thursday, which is normal at 1 p.m. So will be the mock tornado warning, and then at it's the warning's at 1:45. The watch is at 1. So department heads just want to take their staff down and show them where shelter in place locations
Yeah,
are.
we'll review the emergency plan again with department heads and staff that are here during the day.
That's all I got.
Library director's not here. Bob?
The Schilling foreclosure, sheriff's sale was this morning. And I don't know what happened, who bought it, but I will find out.
Now we'll move on to presentation of accounts and other claims against the village.
Okay, the list consists of deposit of payroll deductions, payment of loans, vouchers number 24624 through 24687. I'm just checking one amount here. In the amount of $141,416.42. 2 direct deposit payrolls totaling $62,624.89, and water and sewer utility vouchers number 10277 through 10285 and 10287 through 10290 in the new amount of $309,128.51. Voucher number 10286 has been withdrawn. And Jack, the amount for the village vouchers does include the correct amount for the voucher that you were questioning in the amount of $9.95.
Because it's $9.95 on your...
Right. And so the amount that was on the top of this one, we did cut the check for the $9.95, which was on the base part of the voucher here, so we will be adjusting the top, and we are approving the correct amount here.
So am I correct to say that you took out 10286?
Yes.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the voucher list dated April 5th, 2018 with removing 10286.
I'll second that.
Roll call.
Aye.
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 Through. Communications and miscellaneous business. Blackwater Lake District minutes are in your packet. We approved the DASH program at our last meeting. They will be coming somewhere about the 1st of June, give or take in there. They will be covering 10 acres. taking out the Eurasian milfoil and curlew leaf that they find in the 10 acres. And then we will be looking at doing a plant survey in the spring of 19 to see what effect it had on there and where we should go in 19. Also, not actually in the Lake District News, but pertaining to the lake, is the DNR will be coming in soon as ice is gone to do some seine netting and shocking to see what we have for fish out there.
Jack's name is spelled wrong. Just in case you want to correct it on here.
Oh, okay.
Is this official?
No, it hasn't been approved yet, so I can get that changed. I didn't notice that when Meg sent it to me. So I will get that corrected. Gold Cross ambulance run reports and news is in your packet. Are there any questions or comments on that? Hearing none, we move on to comments and suggestions from citizens present. Yes, sir.
Very nice. I just wanted to point out, Julie had some very good questions. For those who are present that do care about the citizens and stuff, there is a legal means to end this. One, you don't have to go forward. Two, you can divulge that road. I lived in Seneca Heights subdivision in Dale, same situation. There was a road on the plot map that was there for 30 years. Dale recognized that it did not pay to move forward. They decided to divulge it between the property owners. There was 4 property owners. We agreed as property owners to pay for all legal costs associated with it, and then the village, or actually the township, actually gained because now they could tax us on that instead of just a road sitting there. So just want you to know that it is very legal and it is very easy to take care of the situation. Thank you.
Any other comments or suggestions from citizens? Hearing none, we are open for...
I'll second it.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.